I'm Erica Lukes, host of UFO Classified. For me, life isn't simply black and white. Life is full of many unknowns. It is my goal to travel the world and to work with the world's leading experts in the hopes of making groundbreaking discoveries. Join me on UFO Classified Friday nights at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on KCOR.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Oh, good afternoon, good evening, my friends. I am here tonight from Salt Lake City, and I'm wishing you lots of love all over the world. We know that we are living in unprecedented times, and all of us are feeling some pretty interesting effects from what is taking place with the coronavirus. I know for myself as a small business owner, I'm now faced with the possibility of closing down my business of 20 years, and each of us is facing their own personal dilemmas. And it is my hope for all of you that you are safe and healthy, and I will be sending all of you love. I appreciate over the years how you've supported my show. I believe in what I do, and I think that this is one of the few places where you can get good information. I want to thank Northern UFOs and all the wonderful people that make chat so exciting. You are very dedicated, you're intelligent, and I really have the best listeners in the world. Tonight I'm joined by somebody that I truly hold in high regard. He is absolutely brilliant. His perspectives on things are refreshing. They are grounded. And I've turned to him over the years for guidance for my own research. Dr. Massimo Teodoranti is a northern Italian astrophysicist and obtained his laureate degree in astronomy and his PhD in stellar physics at the University of Bologna. As a researcher at the astronomical observatories of Bologna and Naples, and later at the INAF radio telescope of Messina, he has been involved in research on many types of explosive stellar phenomena, such as supernova, nova eruptive protostars, and high-mass close binary stars. More recently, in the search of extrasolar planets and extraterrestrial intelligence within the SETI project. He has written many books, 18 best-selling books that have been translated into multiple languages. He published several articles on quantum physics, atomic and nuclear physics, astronomy, astrophysics, bioastronomy. It goes on and on. I first became aware of his work when I was looking through the NARCAP website, and he contributed a great deal to NARCAP. We'll let him explain some of those things. He recently married a beautiful, magical time tripper, author, editor, artist, Sue Demeter St. Clair, who I adore. I just think she's a beautiful spirit. And so I'm hoping that you both are safe and sound over there in Italy. And how are you guys doing? Okay.
We are completely locked down, but we just can go out for making grocery. We need a lot of luck, but there are queues or something. But at least we are living in a very, very isolated place where the incidence of the coronavirus is much less than in the metropolitan area. So we are a bit safer here, completely locked inside. Like two birds inside the cage. But anyway, that's okay.
But at least you're two lovebirds.
Yeah, we have two lovebirds. And then we have a beautiful view outside of the mountains here. There is a lot of snow. Yesterday it has been snowing. Nothing is lacking in this house. We have everything. I have my keyboards, and we have computers, and everything is okay.
And that's wonderful. That's good. And so during this period, because I'm finding myself turning more and more, to art and writing music again. I mean, are you getting your creative mojo on? I'm sure you are.
Yes, I do. Since a very long time, I make experiment on synthesizers. I like electronic music, and it's something like a trip, like having a trip, my way of meditation. And it's something both scientific from one side, because you need to know electronics on that. On the other side is totally irrational, in the sense that it's something like Buddha or something like that, to be self-hypnotized, and that is a very good way to relax and to vent sometimes, because there are some sequences that are very aggressive, and I am very aggressive in music sometimes, and so it's a good way to relax. Yes, I would say I'm very happy with that.
And that's true. It was funny last night, I mean, just with the prospect of closing my business and just some of the other things that are going on, I just finally said, okay, forget it. I'm going to just, get my headphones on and start writing some music. And it was really,
I know.
it calmed me down, and it did. It was a very great way to release things and to get in that mode, that meditative
Absolutely
mode.
agree.
Yeah. And I love that. And your music is beautiful.
Oh, thank you. It's mad. It's completely mad, like from another world. Because you have to know that all my life, for many decades now, I've been always, how to say, rational, because it's my work demands maximum rationality. So with this kind of music, I compensate on the irrational part. So I try to put a balance in myself using the synthesizer music, and also to create trips, because there are trips with soundscapes that let you go somewhere. It's everyone can use his own fantasy to go where they want to go. I am very inspired by German electronic music from the Berlin School, like Tangerine Dream and
Oh, yes.
Klaus Schulze, and they are those who inspired me and accompanied all my adolescence and my young age, and so I know that sound. It's the same concept as indigenous people in the forest when they play the tom tom. It's something like to create rhythm, and we do the same thing with these electronic machines, and it's like to connect with the deepest level of the universe. And this is my irrational part, which I like sometimes. So
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, after we get done with the show, I'm gonna trip out to some of your music. I think that sounds like a lovely way to spend the day in isolation.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And so, I mean, you have done, like I was mentioning in at the beginning of the show, you have done work that I really look up to. And we oftentimes, especially over here in America, we get so caught up with Roswell or some of these other Area 51 and some of these things that truly, in my opinion, have absolutely nothing to do with research or the subject. I think they're just red herrings for a lot of people. And so give my listeners a background on how you first got involved in studying anomalous light phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, it was just at the end of my PhD. I started to buy a lot of books. I started to collect books that maybe were 10,000 or something like that. But very, very soon, I realized that many of them were very boring, because they were collecting and telling always the same stories. And I was bored. And I wondered, I was just fresh of my PhD, which was in observational astrophysics, so something experimental. I was wondering, what can astrophysicists or astronomers, the same thing, can do with the UFOs if you assume that this kind of phenomena can be reoccurring, can be recurrent in specific areas of the world. So in this case, you are have a good probability to catch some of them. If it's possible to do that, what can we do with that? And so, applying my expertise in astrophysics, I've been using several kinds of telescopes, optical, ultraviolet, infrared, and radio telescopes. It's the same physics, so I thought that we could use off-the-shelf instruments, sensors, that can measure, analyze, and detect the light of this phenomena, so in several wavelengths, and in order to take a photo, high-resolution photo of a phenomenon, in order to count the photons that are coming from the phenomenon in exactly the same way in which we do in stellar photometry, and same time to take spectra of the phenomenon. It's very important because in stellar astrophysics, but also in extragalactic astrophysics, spectroscopy is fundamental because it's something like an identity card of a stellar object. And from that, we can obtain a lot of informations regarding the atomic physics that is going on there, about chemical elements, above all about temperature, pressure, magnetic fields, rotational regime. So with only one spectrum, it could be possible to obtain several information about these lights. But not only so, because you have to connect these instruments with other instruments which are expected to be to work simultaneously with the first ones, such as radio spectrometers, like magnetometers, ELF or VLF spectrometers, gravimeters in some cases. Many of these instruments, I've been using them because, I had published a project which was quite sophisticated because, but it demanded a lot of money, at least $2-3 million, and because I'm a bit expert about military systems like optoelectronic systems that are used by the military for the counter-air system that are in the ships and everywhere. Practically, there are sensors that are tracked by together with a radar toward the target in order to kill the target. But I don't want to kill the target. I wanted to replace the cannons and the missiles with other sensors. So I was thinking of a very modern automatic station that is able to track the phenomenon and at the same time, using the radar, at the same time take data, spectroscopical, photometrical, radiometrical, infrared, everything in the same way. It's the same philosophy and the same physics that we are using in astrophysics. So I told, well, why not? Why not try? Clearly, I didn't win that sum of money. Money was very little. So we tried to do something similar using off-the-shelf instrumentation, just to deploy on the field, as we did in some places of the world where the phenomenon is occurring very often. Later, after these missions, I joined a group, American group, international group really, but it was led by American Dr. Mark Rodiger, for instance, which was called UFO Data, of which I've been a scientific consultant for some years. It's very interesting that the idea is to build an automatic measurement station which can take data automatically as soon as the system is activated by an alarm system of some kind, and point all the instruments toward the target. This is another project, but unfortunately there is not much money funding for that, unfortunately, and it's very frustrating because we already know what we should do in great detail. Much has been published technically, and I'm very frustrated because it seems that our colleagues are scared by this, maybe by the gossip. I don't know what. I don't care the gossip at all, but I care the fact that through this taking data through this phenomenon, we could gain a lot of knowledge about fundamental physics. Because I'm not searching for the aliens for the outer space. I'm trying only to understand what is the physics of the phenomenon. And the only way to know that is to use instruments. Other persons have done this attempt more or less successfully, like Dr. Harley Rutledge 30 years ago in the United States at the Piedmont location at the end of the 70s, and later by Professor Erling Strand in Esdalen, who is doing a wonderful work since 1994. And there are also others who are doing excellent work, like Jim Banelli in Marfa for the Marfa Lights. Also, Dr. Daniel Bruce Catton is doing a beautiful work, even if only limited to video imaging of the Brown Mountain phenomenon. So this was just trying to give you an idea on how this interest came in my life, and then if you ask afterwards, I can tell you more detail about what we saw, where we went, and so on.
I love all of this because this is what I'm truly, truly interested in. And I, as you know, I went to Norway and was privileged enough to visit with Erling and then watch the kids from the college. I guess now I'm getting old and call them kids. I sound like Grandma Moses here, but you can watch them use science, and you look at their faces after they experience something, and it's very empowering to have this type of opportunity and to learn from people like you and Erling, and then also when you mentioned Harley Rutledge, who wrote Project Identification about his study there, and Bunell did such extensive work in Marfa, and then also Greg Long and David Akers.
Absolutely. I know them both. I know them both. Dave Akers, I was a friend with him since a long time. And he has done a lot of good work with, above all, with magnetometry. And
he's interesting. And so, when you first, you got the bug to do this, where was the first place that you actually went to conduct your research?
I would say Esdalen, no doubt. But I would say I would tell a lie if I would deny the fact that I have been eyewitness of strange phenomena before in my life here in North Italy, and not only there. So I was secretly interested in the phenomenon, even if I censored this, because I was very conditioned by the, the rationality of my studies or so. So it was just like an iceberg below my ass, practically. And it came out all of a sudden again. And the first place which I officially visited for missions was Esdalen, firstly in 1994, and for a very important congress about ball lightning, where Erling invited me with many other scientists. It was a very important congress with very important scientists. And nextly, in 2000, we went on purpose to make an on-field mission with several instruments, including radars and other things, with my colleague of the radio astronomical station where I was working at that time. So we documented the phenomenon several times, but I have also to say that the most spectacular events of which we were witness we couldn't document them because at that moment we didn't have a video camera. We went just there without having any intention to take measurements. And yet, the phenomenon, like a tricksterish thing, came just when we less expected. And this happened in Esdalen, but not only in Esdalen, but also in other places of the world where I went for missions like Ontario, Canada, and the Arizona desert to a place where you also, Eric, have gone 2 or 3 years ago, I think.
Yes, and that was such a magnificent place for a multitude of reasons. But, I would love to talk a little bit more about what you experienced there. We had some very interesting experiences that we actually caught on film and so on video. But once you see something like that, of course, your logical mind, you have to put things through the paces and say, okay, this isn't A, B, C, and D, and now what are we left with? And where do we go? And it's just, it's amazing. And it's also refreshing because I've been so, lost in the Skinwalker Ranch types of things that this gives me, you renewed my passion and why I love this topic so much.
I'm happy for that.
Yeah, it is amazing. And so we've got just a couple minutes before break, but what was the first time that you actually caught this on film? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember it was in the beginning of August of the year 2000 in Esdalen. We were at the Aspåskjolen observation point, and the light appeared relatively far away, like a blinking, very luminous light, and we were able to take a video. And in very soon later, there was something that was much, much closer to us. I would say 200 feet, maybe 250 feet at the height of the fir trees that were on our left. All of a sudden, there was a very little light, which I measured, counting my steps, which was about 2 feet, a sort of ellipsoid, low luminosity ellipsoid, which was hovering at man height or close to the tree, 6 feet, somewhere there. And it stayed there for 10 minutes. I tried to approach it. I approached it a little. I was just able to take a photo of it, which is published somewhere. And my colleague was about to leave me there because he was scared the hell about the situation. Jump in the car. Jump immediately in the car. If not, I leave you there.
And we've got to take a break, but I want to continue with that because, oh my God, that's a good story. I'm Erica Lukes here on UFO Classified with Dr. Massimo Teodorini. We will be right back.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
With Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back to UFO Classified, my friends. I want to thank people from all over the world. I have such great supporters, and I'm getting more and more feedback all the time with that. Unfortunately, because I've spoken out on a number of things that are taking place here in the United States, I've had several trolls, but we know, where you're coming from and different things. But the rest, I just have some great people. I'm so grateful for all of you. And as you've heard me talk over the years and do my radio shows, you know that there are a handful of people that I truly, truly look up to. And although I will never be a scientist, I learn a great deal from them. And it has just been a blessing, a really true blessing to have people like Erling Strand in my life, Dr. Massimo Teodoranti, who's my guest this evening. I learn, and they are both so gracious and willing to let me bounce ideas off of them. And I think that says something. I remember there was a specific moment when I was sitting at a table full of scientists and then just me. And it was very interesting to see the way a majority of the people there were willing to accept me and to give me information and to not look down at me. But there was one person that looked over at me and said, "What do you think exactly that you're doing here?" And it was such an interesting moment for me, but I have never felt anything but love and kindness and support from especially you, Dr. Teodoranti. You've been so kind and gracious. And I think when when you're studying something like this, I mean, you have to instill a sense of wonder and awe into people, because it really, I mean, this is such a fascinating and beautiful and frightening, perplexing topic.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. I'm linked to this phenomenon since I was a child. And something strange happened in my childhood. I wouldn't speak about that because it's not, how to say, topical with what I'm telling now, which is more about science on this phenomenon. But something in my life triggered this interest, and I have never left it. Not only that, but this interest in this phenomenon, which is not hypnotic interest, it's inquisitive interest, has been so strong in my life that I was able to attract the right woman in my life, who is a big scholar, my wife Susan Demeter, who is a very clever scholar of UFO phenomenon from the witness point of view, and I learned many other things from her too, because I was considering the UFOs like, let's call them so. For me, UFOs and UAP are the same thing. Is that my approach was mechanicistical, in the sense that I consider them like just a light. There is a light. How do I measure that light? What kind of physical parameter can I measure? Or so. But in time, I learned to realize, to understand that there is much more to the phenomenon than what I supposed. And Susan has taught me a lot about this, and taught me how to interpret in some way some strangeness that happened, because there are, apart from the measurement of the phenomenon, there several strange things have happened. At least 4 times, the most spectacular situations occurred when our instruments, during my mission abroad, were inside the trunk of the car. Or when we were packing the car to go back at about 3 a.m., all of a sudden phenomenon was there. It's something like mocking, or something like if it knew our intentions. For instance, I was in a place of central Italy, because also in Italy there are this kind of phenomena, even if not very well known international, there was a light phenomenon. There was just a white sphere. I was with a colleague eating at a restaurant in summer in a very mountainous area of central Italy, which is Sibillini Mountains. And all of a sudden, there was this little white ball at the daytime, full daytime. Our instruments were inside the car, which was crossing diagonally the mountain at very low height, like if it had a terrain following radar, able to avoid the ground, but it was very low height. And it was going, undulating on the mountain like it was a drone that was searching for something, and it reached the top in about 3 minutes, 4 minutes. That time, we didn't have instruments. And another time, I was with a colleague in Canada, no, twice, I would say. We had just packed the instruments inside the car, and here they are. They were twin, moving all of a sudden. And we couldn't document anything, in spite we had spectral gratings, video camera, infrared, everything, because we had already packed. Another time there was something like a huge ball lightning, but my friend didn't see it. Another time again, I was able to catch it because it was very close to us. But normally, the most spectacular situation, I don't know. We cannot measure them because they happen in the wrong moment. This is the reason why we would like to have a 24-hour automatic measurement station. I remember once I was in the Arizona desert, at that place that you, Erica, know. I had a Questar telescope, and I had my Nikon camera FinePix connected to the telescope. All of a sudden, I saw a light that was moving like a yo-yo inside the field of the telescope. It was extremely spectacular. So I tried to take a photo, but the batteries were gone. But the batteries were new. So I don't understand how is it possible that the batteries were all of a sudden gone. So there is some tricksterish aspect of the phenomenon that is very intriguing. And there is also a connection between the witness. I'm wondering if some kind of this phenomena, independently from the probably natural phenomena of Sdallen-like, I'm wondering if this phenomena would exist without a witness, or if you need a witness to make so that phenomenon appears. So there is something I'm learning, even if I enter into a field that is not my field. I'm learning that probably this kind of phenomenon is strictly connected with our psyche, our aptitude of the moment, and may be able to cause so-called paranormal phenomena. So I'm trying to open my mind more, but I'm maintaining always my firm intention and idea to monitor in a physics way the phenomenon, of course.
And I think that's wonderful that Sue has opened up so many ideas in you and has helped you to look at it in a different way. But as you know, because you've experienced things since you were a child, as have I, there is it touches you, and it doesn't it doesn't leave you alone. It's always there.
No.
And there's always this sense of wonder. I can't imagine there will ever be a day when I don't think about this, multiple times a day. And it's interesting because a few years ago, I found my grandmother used to keep my school papers, and I was looking through my papers from 2nd or 3rd grade, and I had drawn several UFOs and aliens, and it's just like, oh goodness. It's with you, and it's truly it's a wonderful thing. It's been a blessing in my life, even though sometimes it's been difficult. But you were mentioning, when you had this experience with a colleague in Norway that the object got very close, and you had a different reaction than he did. Can you continue to talk about that? I love the story.
It was very funny because I was with my colleague and his wife, and we went there just to have a walk at Aspaskjolen observation point. We didn't have any intention to take measurements, so we didn't bring instruments that night, only just to have a look. And yet, the second most spectacular event occurred. All of a sudden, we see this little light with a sort of whistle. I didn't hear the whistle, but my friend heard, my colleague. All of a sudden, this light stopped at the height of at half height of a fir tree. There was a little wood there, and it remained there, hovering. It was like a chandelier. It was very small because I could measure its dimension, because in the morning later, I went back there to count my steps so I could establish the dimension. It was something like, I would say 3 feet, not between 2 and 3 feet in diameter. It was something that was translucent, something like a flattened bubble, orange. The light intensity was very low, so not comparable at all with a standard Esdalen phenomena there. And I saw also some other things with my binoculars, but I preferred not to tell to my colleague, because if not, he would have rocketed away and left me alone like he promised to do. And at some point I approached. I had only a camera at that moment. I always was bringing, and with a tripod. And I didn't have time to connect the spectral grating that my colleague told, you have to come back because it's better we go away from here. Instead, I was feeling calm, absolutely calm, and I was approaching there. I know of that kind of little lights because it has happened in other places in the world, like in Perm, in the Perm area on the Ural Mountains in Russia, near Siberia, and also in Denmark, they saw the same thing. And I think also in Pine Bush, they saw similar things, very little light. And I approached when I was about, I would say, 100 feet. I took a photo, and I have the photo, which shows I processed it with several software, and seems there is something inside, like two figures, like two fetuses that are looking at each other. It was like a uterus or something like that, very strange. But this was not the only moment where we didn't have instruments and I just could take a photo, but it's not a science, this. A few days before, just one day before we had our workshop at the Bjørgasen Hotel in Esdalen, organized by Erling with other scientists, including my colleagues, all of a sudden my usual colleague, who has been also my boss at the radio telescope, very brilliant electronic engineer, by the way, told, look there. And I told her, well, that is Cassiopeia Dawn. It's a constellation. It was not a constellation. There were three lights which were going towards us. And for a while I thought about the NOS constellation of satellites, because they fly in that way, in some way like the Starlink satellites, but they fly in a triangular form. But when it approached, I could see that there was sort of, fuselage. I could see it because there was a residual light. It was 1140 more or less, which was in Norway so it was not absolutely not totally dark, and it was like a wave moving like a wave in the air, and maybe it was an effect due to some aurora borealis that were happening sometimes, giving that effect. This thing was triangular, and clearly it was not a natural phenomenon, and it reached our vertical, and then it started to rotate at that over our head. I don't know how tall was it, but probably it was, 1,000 feet maybe. It had 3 lights at the vertices of this triangle, which I could see like a black shadow. No central light, only 3 lights. It started to rotate so coldly. I took powerful flashlights and I pointed against it. And then, funnily, I pointed my laser on the lawn that was at our shoulder, just joking with my colleagues. Oh, okay, he's here, so you can land. Now land. Can you imagine? I was feeling like a policeman stopping a car and telling, show me the car license or something. It didn't do that, unfortunately, and it disappeared literally over our heads. Disappeared gradually. It was not anymore there. It's not that it went away. It just disappeared after making a rotation on our vertical. So that was clearly not a natural phenomenon. I don't know what it was. It can be everything. It could have been an experimental drone, maybe. It was making no noise. I know that in Trondheim, someone is making some, at that time, so 20 years ago, they were making project of drones, so I cannot exclude that. But that one was definitely a machine. And strangely, the same year, in summer 2000, I was, we met, which you also, Erika, met, probably, famous witness of the Stalin phenomenon. Like that woman, I don't remember her. Maybe you met.
You know what? I wanted to meet with her, and unfortunately she did pass away, but I was able to meet with her brother. And if there's a really wonderful movie, and of course it's, oh my gosh, The Portal. Is that the name of the movie where this woman was interviewed and she was just, the whole town. And that's a great movie, and I'll find the director's name out and mention that when we come back from the next break. But really lovely people.
Yeah, very much. And a very reserved person. I remember she was with her husband, and they were very reserved. She's a person who doesn't search for, fame or something, but she wanted to tell to us scientists her experience. And I mentioned this woman because who was also a friend of Leif Havik also. And she told me that she saw, or her husband, a triangular thing, completely black, something like a very flattened pyramid, but which was landed on the ground, and it had just rained. It was raining, and when it was on the ground, you could see the vapor, which is typically caused by a very hot surface on the mud or something. And she told me of that. It was just on the ground. I don't remember now the exact description. When she told me that a few days before, we saw that thing in the sky, and it was absolutely spectacular. But we couldn't document it because also that day, a friend with a radar and with a video camera was not available at that night. The object was too fast, and there was no way to track it. You see, if I try to take a spectrum of it while it is moving, we have a blurred spectrum which we cannot use. So that is the reason why in my initial project in 1994, we need a tracking system, something like a radar, military radar or optoelectronic system. Radar system of the military is able to track missiles and cannons, like the Vulcan Phalanx, for instance, and toward the target. But in this case, we don't need cannons. It's peaceful. We need to point the sensors. So we need a tracking system that is efficient, that is similar to the military one. We have used radar, yes, but it was a meteorological radar. So it was not a radar for tracking. We need something military. And I have sent the project to the military, to the Department of Defense in 1996. And a friend, that time was a friend, but I don't know if he was really a friend, asked me to make a proposal, technical proposal to the Department of Defense. They never answered to me. That proposal, which I did free, very long, it was technical, disappeared inside the black hole practically. And only 10, 15 years later, through some journalist, I knew that this military were very angry because I manifested knowledge that only they can have. So a military system, which I know very well. And but it was just thanks to this knowledge of the military system, so optronics, sensors, not only weapons, that we can solve the problem using a military-like system. This is the only way to, if you want to make something good. And we would need not more, I would say, than $10 million to have an optronic station that is specifically dedicated to this kind of moving phenomenon, because they are moving, so that's the problem. So you have a blurred, how to say, image. For instance, if you see the old beautiful photo taken by Erling Strand, but also by Leif Havik of the Stalin phenomenon, you can see a truck in the sky, just because they're moving and they're pulsing. Instead, we need to have them standing still, so tracking them with a radar, so the image is stable and we can obtain high quality and scientifically usable data. Moreover, my favorite instrument, if I had, how to say, $15,000, would be the Olympus high-speed camera, which is able to take 1 million frames per second. So we could have a high time resolution monitoring using a high-speed camera plus a long focal length zoom lens, where we could obtain both images and spectra, so to see how the spectra are changing with time. And this is the same philosophy that we use, procedure, in stellar astrophysics when we are studying stellar variability.
Oh, that is so interesting, and I'm sorry I've got to cut you off right there. I wish we could get equipment. I wish we could get you that good equipment and funding. I'm Erica Lukes. I'm here with Dr. Massimo Teodoranni, and you can go to his website, massimoteodoranni.com, to look at the wonderful articles, some work that he is doing currently. It's just brilliant, so please go there. We will be right back.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico, and the rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brizzell was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Good evening, my friends. I hope that you are all safe and healthy and stay that way. My heart, my prayers are going out to all of you, and this is truly an unusual time that we're living in, but I hope that we will all stay safe and make it through this. I am here tonight with someone who is an inspiration to me and should be to every one of you listening. He's an Italian astrophysicist. He's coming here tonight from Italy, and where I'm sure his beautiful wife, who is a researcher and author, editor, artist, Sue, is sitting hopefully close by, I'm sure. And please give her my love. But I want to I thank you so much. One of these days, I think the four of us, my husband as well, we need to have a group Skype. I think that would be really fun.
Oh, yeah, it would be.
I know, we will have to do it. But
She tells you hello.
Oh, thank you. Give her my love. You have talked about some really interesting things. You're not only did you have experiences as a child, but you began to really dig into this, when you were getting your PhD, and then you understood that you needed to get funding, to get instrumentation, to actually go out and do field research, and you found that there were specific places on the planet where there was recurring phenomena, and Canada, Arizona, southern Arizona, Norway, Italy. So that's been amazing to hear about that. And I want to talk a little bit about, we were talking about equipment, which I'll get into again. The DoD aspect is also another intriguing aspect. But when you were looking at, you're doing the research in specific places on the planet, what are the commonalities?
Good question. Well, maybe the main commonality is that this kind of phenomenon tends to appear very often close to the ground. This happens very often in Esdalen because we documented that, but also many other persons documented that. In Esdalen, in Marfa, in Texas, Marfa lights always happen on the ground and they move horizontally. A similar thing happens on the Brown Mountain, which is something that is very close to the ground. In Esdalen, sometimes it's in the sky. I took one photo in particular about that. In Yakima, Dave Akers documented the lights in the sky mostly. But in most cases, this kind of apparently geophysical phenomenon occurs very close to the ground. That's the reason why some scientists, and I would mention Professor Friedman Freund of NASA, German, but he's working in United States, very, very important scientist, think that these lights can be triggered by electric current that are produced by the ground. the theory is quite complex, but the most simple version is that it can happen that sometimes underground there are quartz materials, not only quartz but also basalt or other particular geological minerals, that they can crash together, especially during in fault lines, especially during earthquake, but not only during them. And this crashing together can liberate the so-called piezoelectricity, which is able to liberate a lot of electricity in the air in such a way that it's possible to ionize the air. So when the air is ionized, you see that it becomes a plasma, and so it becomes a light phenomenon. This theory is very interesting because clearly it could explain the trigger mechanism of the one which would be definitely a natural phenomenon. But there are some problems because this ball of lights cannot spontaneously exist like they are, because something that is very ionized is also very hot. And the elementary laws of thermodynamics say that hot objects in air tend to expand. The expansion of this plasma cool very quickly the phenomenon. So the phenomenon would last only maybe 1 second. Okay. Instead, in Esdalen, but not only in Esdalen, but also in the other locations that I mentioned, it's able to live up to 2 hours, turning on and turning off. Yes, not always constant light, but it is always there. So physically, from the physics point of view, we are wondering what kind of center force is able to keep the plasma concentrated without making it expand. So what is the confining mechanism of the plasma? It must be a very huge force that is a sort of center force. Regarding this, several theories, of course, speculations in this case, have been proposed. People have spoken also about magnetic monopoles, like Dr. David Freiberger of the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, who was with us in 1994. Someone else has spoken about mini black holes in the nucleus of this plasma, so it would be able to attract this plasma and to make it long-living practically. So we don't know yet what is the mechanism that is keeping this plasma self-contained. We don't know yet this. That's the reason why this research is very important to take measurements, especially spectra, simultaneously with other instruments, because we can understand the physics of that in the same way in which we understood the physics, for instance, of Cepheid stars, pulsating stars, or quasars. For instance, studying the variability mechanism with time of several kinds of celestial objects, we were able to understand their physics. For instance, in quasars, through the variability mechanism, not only that, but also that, we were able to understand that in the nucleus of quasars, namely extragalactic galaxies, which are very compact, we were able to understand that there is a huge black hole in the nucleus inside. So the importance to study simultaneously with many instruments, many kind of instruments, through all kind of wavelengths from VLF up to the X-rays possibly, we can understand the physics of the phenomenon, whatever it is, even if it is a spacecraft. Because
I mean, all of this is so fascinating, and I have to go back because you're mentioning Friedman Freund and noticing that there are locations where these lights are triggered, whether it's the fault line, the quartz, the electrical current in the ground. Could there be a possibility that perhaps some of these places, like Skinwalker Ranch, I mean, the people understood that these things were taking place, and so they could use that as a laboratory to perhaps generate these types of objects?
Well, I don't know the geophysical situation of this Uinta Basin. So I cannot judge, and also because I'm not a geophysicist, I'm another kind of physicist. I don't think that it's possible to use this kind of energy, also because it's random. It's not like the geothermal energy that you can use in Iceland, for instance, to heat up the houses or so. This energy is random. Doesn't occur always at the same point. It liberates a lot of energy, but no, I don't think that it's possible to use it, at least not from us.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting, and I don't want to dwell on this too much, but it is interesting to note that there are specific types of technologies that have been, that we are seeing that are employed in war situations or even on the general public, and they can mimic certain types of phenomena.
Yes, they are. Yep.
And so it's interesting. And how do you, because it makes it difficult when you have something that is man-made, especially you see this a lot in the United States. How do you differentiate the true, phenomenon from something that is man-made?
It's very difficult. This is a very important question. It's very difficult. I know for sure, because I knew a person who knew another person who was an engineer, researcher, who was working on a project of light artifacts that are used by the military together with audio sound artifacts for the so-called psychological warfare. So these things do exist. There is a lot of patents. I have a huge document, 2,000 pages, which shows how some kind of technology can be used for the psychological warfare, which at the best of my knowledge has been used also during the Vietnam War, especially using sound artifacts, artificial sound, just to affect the psychology of the enemy, for instance, or using light artifact, you could hypnotize people, because if an entire troop sees a squadron of UFOs, you see something that is moving in a specific way, it could distract them. And so it's a good way to make a war. There is not only this, there are also techniques using very long wavelength, namely ELF, namely something that is from 0 to 100 hertz. This can cause hallucinations also. And this was experienced by Dr. Michael Persinger with his famous helmet. And clearly there are microwaves that can cause other kind of hallucination, but also physical effect on the body, because they are very, they produce heat. So they are man-made systems that can be passed for alien when they are not. So it's difficult to distinguish the two things. Very difficult. But I know they are. For instance, if we saw that triangle in the sky in Esdalen, I didn't assume immediately that they were alien. I might have think it's one kind of military artifact that is tested in very lonely areas. It can be. But if I think about the Tic-Tac case of the F-18E Super Hornet with Fravor pilot, and I saw the video of the coming from the sensor pod on the HUD, on the CRT of the screen of the aircraft. That kind of thing cannot be produced by anything that we know. We cannot produce this like a hologram because a hologram wouldn't give any radar track. There is no kind of human-made drone that is able to fly at that speed and that is able to make that kind of maneuvers. There is no artifact on the computer, on the screen, on the sensor that has created that. So in some cases, it's possible to say it's not man-made at all. In other cases, there is a confusion. Yes, I admit it.
And that is so interesting for me. And my thought process has changed so much given the current research. But I know as well as you do that there is something very, very real, and that has been studied for decades over in Norway and all of these other places around the world that, as you have mentioned, and that is really important to note. And but it also, how do we keep our feet on the ground enough to know that sometimes maybe what we're seeing isn't a UFO? And I have to ask you, when you've been in close proximity to these objects, what kind of did you notice physical effects when you were close?
No, I didn't feel. I was not even scared at all. I was completely concentrating on trying to take at least a photo. No, there were no effect, no electrostatics of any kind. I saw something else in the dark that my friend didn't see. Something like a pendulum, something like a thing that was close to it. A figure, a very tall figure, but probably it was the row of a tree, and very many tiny lights that were below it. But no, and there was no effect. You are right, it's difficult sometimes to distinguish some man-made effect. Clearly, the most common Sdalen lights, those that you see close to the ground, could be very easily simulated by a man-made apparatus. But this can be ruled out or confirmed by simply taking a spectrum of the light, because we have a very rich database of spectra which can be produced by several kind of illumination system, by chemical elements that create very specific spectral lines or continuum spectrum that is particularly ondulated. We can immediately identify that with what we human know. So I would say human artifact, especially made of light, can mock people of the road or people who are not expert in these things, letting them think, oh, we are the UFOs, or we are going to abduct you, or we are your new gods, or so. But they cannot cheat us, astronomers, because with a very simple spectral grating, we can diagnose what kind of light is that through a simple analysis that requires calibration, wavelength calibration, and line identification. So through that, we would unmask everything. So that is very important. and through the kind of measurement that we already did, we are able to rule out things that belongs to man-made artifacts, definitely.
And thank you so much for clarifying that. And it is interesting to note, and maybe you know more than I do, but from what I have observed, I do not recall where people have been injured at specific locations like Norway, in Marfa, and in Yakima. I mean, and that is what makes Skinwalker Ranch truly unique. Is this is people are getting they've radiation burns. People are subject to things, and so that to me, if there really genuinely is something that is not man-made, it doesn't appear to be injuring anyone.
Not in Esdalen, not in Marfa, not in at the Brown Mountain, not in Yakima. But I know that injuries occurred at Skinwalker Ranch. I know that. But maybe it can happen also from this kind of natural phenomenon, because if this phenomenon is starting to radiate in the microwave, then microwaves can create a lot of problems. In fact, the microwaves are used, especially, there are projects, especially American, but also Italian, of a direct energy weapon, which can burn. It's anti-riot system. It's used. It's a very cynical system. The weapons of this kind do exist, and I don't know how much they're experimental or they're operational yet. But if there is if this kind of phenomenon is able to emit a microwave emission of radiation, and considering that radiation is decreasing with the inverse of the square of distance, if it's very close, it can create injuries. One, for instance, was the famous case, Cash Landrum case, in which there was not only microwave effect, but also radiation effect. So something related to the radioactivity has been reported in Romania at the Pădurea Baciu forest near Cluj-Napoca, which is another very important strange locations in the world, especially in Romania, in Transylvania. There was also a professor, a chemistry professor, measured also alpha particle with a Geiger counter. So sometimes the phenomenon itself can be dangerous, but normally not. So I would say that Skinwalker situation, well, it's the one probably which is most dangerous than all the others, because I have monitored several locations of Earth, and I have at least 50 places. But there was another place in the past, in the 80s, and it was in Colares. I think it's an island in Brazil. And in the 80s, there was something absolutely weird that was happening to the population of that indigenous persons living there. They were hit by beams. Many were wounded. Several ones died. And the situation was so serious that Brazilian government decided to investigate sending soldiers there.
And I would love to continue on that when we get back. We've got one last break. I'm Erica Lukes here with Dr. Massimo Teodoranyi. This is an incredible conversation. Stick around. We will be back.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
With Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts!
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back to the last segment of UFO Classified. You know how this makes me feel? Because I could talk and talk to my guests for hours. I learned so much, and I am grateful to all of you for supporting the show. You can go to UFOclassified.com to learn more, see who my upcoming guests are, and to help support the show. Like I said, I appreciate you so much, and we're all in this together, trying to learn and make sure that we're not falling down rabbit holes that aren't in our best interests. There is truth out there, and my guest this evening is one of the brave and intelligent individuals who's actually been addressing this over the decades. Dr. Massimo Teodoranti is an astrophysicist, best-selling author, and an electronic musician who I will be listening to later when I need a zen moment. But welcome back, and thank you so much for being here. I know it's getting late where you are. And we've talked about so much, your personal experiences, different places that you've been. And when we left off, we were talking about an example of objects in the 80s in Colares where objects did physically injure people. And that was of interest, I know, to Jacques Vallée and others like that. Is that one of those cases where that was the phenomenon, or was that man-made?
This is very difficult. It's very difficult to say. I remember that the Brazilian army took several photos. They didn't divulge. Their investigations because I think they've used radars, theodolites, telescopes, or something. But they released something like a dozen of photos of light phenomena with a beam of light. I have no idea. I have no idea if that one was a real phenomenon or if it was a test area of the military. But I don't think at that time the Brazilian armed forces had direct energy weapons at all. Not even the Americans had them. So no one, if it happened now, I would say, yes, probably some cynical individual would like to test even on people or something just to see what is the effect that it does. But and now, not at that time. I think at that time they didn't have microwave systems, especially directed energy weapons like masers that are very burning. Lasers were very experimental, and so it's difficult to me to think that that phenomenon was really triggered by the military. Military were there to check because it was a question of national security.
Right. Interesting. Thank you. And it's all of this is very perplexing for me. But let's talk about some of the incredible experiences that you've had and how they've affected. Obviously, once you have an experience like this, and we know that this has been a lifelong endeavor of us. I mean, it manifests in your life in different ways. And so with synchronicities and different things, what ways have you seen that this has affected your life and your life with Sue?
Mm-hmm. Difficult question to answer. It's well, I have to tell you that in this case, because in this case I would have to speak about the non-rational part of my life, which is very difficult for me. I can
Absolutely.
I can tell you anyway something, only something, because it's very interesting, honestly. I remember it started when I was 25, and I started to have incredible synchronicities, but really impressive in the sense that I was wondering in my mind something, and all of a sudden the answer was coming from the television set. So there was a movie where an actress or an actor was answering. There was a synchronization between my mental question and what was transmitted in that movie in television. So it was really very impressive. But the most impressive thing is that after 2-3 years, I was 28 years old, and I was searching for a job. I had already my master in astronomy. I didn't have yet my PhD, but I had my master. And I started to have so-called hypnagogic visions, which are not known. I don't think psychologists are able to explain them, but I experienced these things many times, and it's something like to go to see a movie inside your mind in color and very high definition. All of a sudden, these images appear in the mind of people, and it happened to me too many times. Images of everything. It can be faces, landscapes, human faces, non-human faces, but very, very clear. And at those moments, your mind is extremely rational. So these images activate the left hemisphere of the brain, I'm sure. But the problem is that as soon as you start to rationalize, they disappear. So you should stop your brain and to let these images flow. Sometimes I had the impression that these images were, how to say, coming from some other intelligence, something in order to trigger me in some way. And it was strange because the morning after I woke up, after having these images in my mind, which happened only just a few seconds before falling asleep, sometimes also in the hypnopompic form as soon as you wake up. In the mornings, all of a sudden I started to feel papers and papers of mathematical formulas, asking questions to myself regarding very important points about astrophysics or physics, general physics, like the conservation of energy, the ergosphere of a black hole, or something. I don't know where they were coming. I had the sensation to be connected with something. Before that, there were experiences when I was a child, but I prefer not to speak about that at the moment because they are not useful in the sense of this interview. I can speak about this hypnagogic dreaming. I think they're very stimulating. They trigger the brain. They turn on the brain, and maybe they explain the reason of the intuition, how this scientific discovery is coming sometimes through visions and the intuitions, and the history of science demonstrates that. I thought so much about these experiences of mine that all of a sudden a book came out in English, which is called The Hyperspace of Consciousness, which is now not anymore published in paper forms, but only as a book on the Bath, on Australian publisher, buzzword books, and there I explain my speculation. I tell since the beginning that this is only speculation. It's not a theory yet. But I felt that I had to write down these notes because it's extremely important. I think that there is an alternative way to transmit information in our brain that is different from a radio, from a telephone, from a computer, and it deals with non-locality, which is a quantum type. Clearly, this is a very delicate thing because New Agers have used all this, but in my book I explain how information can be transmitted without making the wave function collapse technically with quantum mechanics. There is something, I believe, there is a way to transmit information everywhere in the universe through mind. This is, how to say, it's only a speculation, okay? It's not a demonstration. It's only a speculation that I would like to investigate more because I think it exists, but I cannot demonstrate it yet. So after your question, I felt to speak about this.
Thank you. And I'm so lucky that I actually have that book in my library and in paperback. I'm just grateful of that. It's excellent, and you always give me pause for thought, and I love that. And let's talk a little bit. Your website, by the way, is beautiful, and you have several great sections: shattered reality, interviews with you, the quantum entanglement, telepathy, SETI, and different articles. And did you do your website?
No, my wife Susan did my website.
Dang, she's good. She's very expert. She's handling several websites of her own, which is also very stylish. I just sent her my articles, and she organized that. She's really a treasure for me, and she did very well. Yes. It's absolutely gorgeous. I think it's one of the best looking websites that I've seen. So she did an amazing job, and
she did. Yeah,
I love it. And so, if you were to recommend, because there are a lot of people like myself who want, we hear you talk, and it's like we just want to get our backpacks on, and we want to go to specific locations, and research this or try to have a personal experience. If you were to tell someone, what type of instrumentation that they could get on a poor man's budget, what would be some of the things that you would recommend to people?
Yeah, according to my experience, there are some instruments that can be useful but not very practical. For instance, VLF receiver, which you connect with a computer so that you see the plot, the spectrogram that is going through the screen, and this is important. It's additional, but not particularly, in my opinion, I would say, not particularly relevant. If not, maybe to measure geophysical things, I would suggest, first of all, a very high quality DSLR camera, very high quality optically and electronically, so they would spend something like $2,000, I would say. I would suggest to apply a spectral grating, like the rainbow optics, for instance, which of the cost of about not more than $300-400. So you can put the grating on the lens of the camera, so they can take spectra, and spectra are extremely important. I would suggest a sophisticated video camera, I mean semi-professional, with a night shot option. I would not suggest a magnetometer, because unless the magnetometer is synchronized with all the other instruments, because measuring magnetic perturbation is important, of course, But if it's not connected with correlated with the other instruments, it's practically useless because and also because magnetic perturbation can be due to natural causes. So I don't think it's important. I would say good cameras, 2 good cameras of high quality, one for photography and one for spectrography. I would use night goggles. I can tell this because I used night goggles in Esdalen, and there was a light just over Oyungen Lake, which you probably saw. There was a light hovering there, visible at naked eye, and it disappeared. But when I put the goggles, it was still there. So it's important to cite the phenomenon. I would say, if you want to make something decent, you need to spend $10,000. Minimum $5,000, I would say.
Well, I look at how much I've spent on this over the years, and I probably could have purchased 2 villas in Italy. So it's, I wish that I had some better equipment, and someday I'll be able to do that. And with regard to the camera settings, when you're photographing something at night, do you have specific, what would you set everything to make sure that you're getting the best photograph that you can to capture the phenomenon?
It depends, because the problem is that it depends on what is the luminosity of the phenomenon. So it's very difficult to plan it in advance. If the phenomenon is moving, its luminosity decreases or increases. So it's very difficult. Normally I would use a standard exposure of, I would make 3 exposures. I would make one of 1 second, one of 5 seconds, and one of 30 seconds, and maybe one of 1 minute, because it's difficult to plan it before. Clearly, you cannot use the automatic mode, and if possible, I would use the manual mode, but it's difficult because you have to be very fast in those moments, so it's not an easy task. I would use 3 exposures of test. And
that's good to know. And I have to ask you, because I've been out in the field and I've taken photos. In one instance, I set my camera on a tripod and just took a series of photos. And it was interesting because you could see a light that was moving, but yet everything else other than that light was perfectly clear.
Yeah.
And so what are things when you're looking at photographs and trying to determine whether you've taken a photograph of an airplane or something genuine? Are there any clues for us on that?
Oh, it's difficult to say from a photo to distinguish an airplane from... It depends. No, you can. Because an airplane, I have other kind of lights. They have... at least in Europe, white, red, and green lights sometimes. So you can distinguish that of an airplane. Also the disposition of the lights along the fuselage and the wings. You can distinguish very well the central landing light, which is very luminous, especially when the airplane is landing towards you. It looks like a huge light, looks like a UFO, but it's an airplane. But one of these phenomena normally are only one light, and all the lights are disposed randomly, not geometrically, normally. So it's difficult to say. It's difficult to extract real scientific information from a photo in general.
Absolutely. And speaking of photos, because you have taken some phenomenal photos in the field before, and is there a specific place or places that we could go to view some of the photographs you've taken?
Well, in addition to Esdalen, where you already went, I would say there is a place in the south of northern Italy, in our Apennine, not far from where I am here, northern Italy, where there is specifically one place where strange lights appear on the top of a flat mountain, which is similar to the Devil's Tower in some way, but it's fatter and shorter. That is a very nice place. I know a very specific observation point through my friend Nicola Tosi, who discovered those lights. He's an amateur astronomer, but very skilled. There is that. If you want to be scared by yourself, you should go to Cluj-Napoca in Romania, specifically to Padurea Baciu or Hoia Baciu forest, where it's a very specific forest where sometimes you can see trees that are anomalous. The trees, they're completely bent, and it's possible to see sometimes light phenomenon, but also strange presence there. I've never gone there yet, but if you want to be really scared, that's the ideal place.
Okay. Well, I would say once everything gets, we can travel again. I say we got to go. That could be. In
fact, with Susan, we were planning to go just there. So maybe one day we can organize something with some cameras, and then, well, after working, we can go to see the Dracula Castle and all those things,
That has been on my list, so that would be a lot of fun, and that's interesting. I'm going to be looking up more about that forest. That sounds fascinating. And so, I know that our lives are on hold at the moment, but what are your plans for the future? And I know it's important to acquire funding. What are you hoping to do?
Well, I have several targets. Since some time, I'm asking funding. I want to ask funding to buy the Olympus high-speed last version, the one that is able to give a time resolution of 1 million frames per second. And parallelly, I am planning to write a book about my own experience with the so-called UFOs, which I am not ashamed to call them UFOs. It means unidentified. I don't need to use UAP or something, because it's time I write down that kind of book. And if I have money funding, yes, I would go again to Esdalen, clearly. Erling, in fact, invited me some months ago. I would like, but I have no funding for that. I hope soon, because I hope this virus extinguishes as soon as possible so that we can travel again, because, it's an uncomfortable situation. It's difficult to make plans for the future now, but right. I do have it.
Right. Well, I look forward to the day when I can actually meet both you and Sue, and we can travel to some interesting locations and just research and study and have a glass of wine and enjoy life and all of the wonderful mysteries around. And so I just want to thank you. I know you're up late, and I just, like I said, I really respect you. You are somebody that we should be looking at, and you're one of a kind. So thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your mentorship and all of that. And I want to tell people to go to MassimoTeodoranni.com to look at this beautiful website. Absolutely. This has been such a pleasure. And for all of my listeners out there, I want to, yes, I'd love it. I love it. And I hope that you are safe and that everything in Italy gets back to normal.
You too.
Thank you. And for people all over the world, just hang tight. I don't know. This is an interesting time, but at least we have KCOR and we can listen to great programming. I want to thank Tina Marie for everything and all of my show supporters and listeners. I wish you all the best. Be safe, be healthy, and we will catch you next week.
Same wishes from me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Erica. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area